How do you play chord solos? So of course we hear chord solos all the time from our favorite guitar players like Wes, Joe Pass, George Benson, and it seems impossible to play, or at least very difficult, because it's already really tricky to just play single note line solos and then just imagining playing entire chords for each note in those single note lines. But that's not really how you think about it, and that's what I want to show you in this video. So first I'm going to go over an easy chord solo, just a short one chorus chord solo on the song Ladybird. Then I'm going to talk about how you make some exercises that are going to help you make solos like this so that you can technically play them. And finally I'm going to talk about how you make melodies for chord solos, because that's a little bit different than the way we think about just the normal solos that we have in eighth note lines and just straight ahead single note solos. And this is actually something that's really useful to check out, because it's also going to improve the way that you play single note solos. My name is Jens Larsen, learn jazz, make music. Let's first check out the one chorus solo on Ladybird. When you're playing a chord solo, then you're playing a melody and you're adding a chord under each note in that melody. And of course that sounds really complicated and like you have to do a lot of thinking. But when I'm playing like that, I'm actually only thinking about the melody. I'm not really thinking about the chords. And you can practice towards that. So if we take a look at the first phrase in the solo, then we have... And if we look at the melody here, that's a really simple melody. It's really just scale movement. So it's just moving from the fifth, the G, and then up to the B, and then ending sort of with this response or conclusion with B going down to A. And you can practice playing melodies like this, because stepwise movement and then just all using major 7 chords is something that you can get into your playing by just trying to take a C major scale and then harmonize all the notes in there with a C major 7 type chord. And that would be something like this. The one note that's a little bit difficult, and also the one voicing that's a little bit strange in this exercise, is the one that you have on the high F here. So of course F doesn't really sound that good on a C major 7, because it sounds like this. It doesn't really work. And it's also not a melody note that you're gonna have for any sort of extended period of time on a C major 7. So the way I'm harmonizing it in the exercise is that I'm actually making it into a passing chord. That's just the easiest solution in this case. That means that I'm playing the C major 7, and then I'm playing a D minor 7 to harmonize the F, and then moving up to this voicing that I'm also using in the beginning for the C major 7. Of course, I could go over all the chords and all the scales in this song and then give you all the exercises for that, but actually that's maybe not really gonna help you that much, because what you really want to be able to do is that you want to be able to make these exercises for yourself so that you have the voicings and the choices in terms of fingerings that really work for you. And this is a personal thing, and there's another aspect of this as well, because it's not like we have a set solution for this. So the exercise that I just showed you is just one example that works well in this tempo for this melody, but it might not always be the best solution. That really depends on what you're playing. So when you're practicing this, try not to have two set solutions. Try different things, make variations, try different kinds of voicings, and always go for what is easy to play, because that way you're gonna get something that you can really use when you're improvising. So as an example, right now, I have this in the exercise. Now I'm using this voicing to harmonize the D because I just like the sound of it, and I use it for a lot of other things, so it makes sense for me to use that. But if I have a fast scale run, then it makes a lot more sense to use different voicings in two places actually, and then I would play something like this. And that's simply because it's easier to move using this voicing and also using this voicing. And that's the most important thing. The melody is more important. You want to have a way of playing it so that the melody comes across. If your voicing choice is going to make it difficult for you to play the melody, then you want to think about how you're using your voicings. To give you a few more examples of how I think and how I construct these harmonized scales, then let's just look at the F minor 7 and the B flat 7 as well. So the F minor 7, if I harmonize the scale there, so F minor 7, B flat 7 is essentially just a 2-5 in E flat major. So that's the scale I want to harmonize. You can consider that, of course, F minor Dorian and B flat Mixolydian as well. That depends on how you want to think about it. So the F minor 7 would be something like this. With the C major 7, then the difficult note to harmonize was the F. And the way I did that was that I played a D minor 7 voicing and then just transitioned up to this E minor to also get a C major sound here. But with the F minor 7 in a 2-5-1, then the difficult note is the D. So the way I'm doing that here is I actually chose to do that with an F minor voicing still. So I have an F minor 13 like this. And then I'm moving on to this pretty straightforward inversion of an F minor 7 chord. Until now, I've used the high E string as the melody note in all the voicing exercises, but you of course also sometimes use the B string. So for the B flat 7, I'm gonna do the same kind of exercise, but I'm gonna have the melody on the B string. That will be something like this. For these voicings with the melody on the B string, I chose to use 3-note voicings. I do that most of the time because that's a little bit more flexible if you want to have melodies that jump back and forth between the high B and the high E string. So in this case, I think the only note that really deserves a mention here is the E flat, because of course the E flat doesn't sound that great on a B flat 7. So the way I did that was I just turned it into like an A flat major triad, which is a B flat sus chord. That's a very easy way to deal with that. And then I can just move on to another B flat 7 voicing. That's mostly how I'll do this. So let's look at how the solo is constructed so that we can see what voicings I'm using and what kind of melodies, but also some of the other tricks that I'm using once in a while that you can also apply to chord solos. On a side note, if you want to check out a chord melody or actually a block chord arrangement of the song Ladybird, then there is one on Patreon. There's a link to that post in the description of this video. If we look at the melodic idea on the C major 7, then that's a motif. It's moving rhythmically within the C major 7 and it also gets sort of a conclusion. And I'm actually using that as a motif so that I also have a melody on the F minor 7, B flat 7. So the main theme is actually this. And then I'm just repeating that, but then the second time I'm starting on the 4. So it's kind of moving within the bar. Then I give it sort of an ending with a conclusion. And on the F minor 7, I can use exactly the same idea. I just move up 1 fret, and then I make a variation on this, adding a conclusion on the B flat 7, which is... So this is a chromatic melody, so this melody. And of course the first one is just a B flat 13, the last one is a B flat 7, and the one in between is really just taking the voicing that I would use on the F and then moving that up a half step, so. And that's the easiest way to create chromatic movement in a chord solo. Back on the C major 7, I'm playing the same melody as I did in the beginning, so we just get those 2 bars. And then moving on to the B flat minor 7, now I'm going into a different melody altogether. So I'm first just sliding into this B flat minor 7 with a 9. And now I want to add an arpeggio melody, so I want to play an F minor triad. The way I'm doing that, so of course if you harmonize an arpeggio with complete voicings, that gets really heavy and a little bit cumbersome to play also. So sometimes it makes sense to just play that with some really small voicings, and in this case, third intervals are really practical to use. That's also something you'll find Joe Pass does quite often. So what I'm doing here is I'm just playing a third under the melody note all the time, so we get this. And then moving to E flat 7 altered. And here we have an example of what I talked about with the B flat 7, because here I have a 3-note voicing when I have the melody on the B string, and then I can just easily start moving up to the E string by keeping the same voicing and then just adding a note. And then I resolve that to A flat major 7. When we look at the melody, especially in the first 8 bars here, then it's really pretty much the same melody most of the time, because it's just... And that's something that's a simple stepwise melody, it relies a lot more on rhythm than it does on the note choices. And that's also because when we're playing a complete chord under it, we have all the color. So playing arpeggios is not as needed as when you're playing single note lines, but we have to rely more on making the rhythms interesting and also just the phrasing and the dynamics. And that's something that's really useful to work with. And of course also really necessary, because we can't really play a lot of complicated arpeggios when we're playing with complete chords all the time. So that's really what you want to focus on. Think in riffs, think in small melodies. So also think about songs like Bernie's Tune or Sad and Dull, which also relies on rhythm and a few notes, and in that way can build really an interesting melody. The next part of the A flat major 7 melody also relies on this sort of riff sound, because really what I'm playing here is a C minor triad, so again using a 3-note voicing because the melody is on the B string, and then it's just a simple scale run really, and then I repeat it. And in that way, repeating small melodies is also something that's really gonna give you that sense of playing a riff, thinking in big band phrases and using that kind of melodic language. That's really useful and also kind of close to what's happening when you're playing harmonized melodies like this. And on the A minor 7, then I'm not really focusing as much on the melody, I'm really just focusing on the rhythm. So the melody is just gonna be a B, and then I'm first just playing an A minor 7 with a 9 like this, and then using the same melody note but then on the D7, and kind of adding another melody note, and that really just works as a conclusion. So, and then it kind of goes on the D minor 7, because we still have this idea of the rhythm being the repeated 8 notes as the melodic motif that I'm working with, and then another conclusion to give me this G7 altered, and then returning to that, but now I have more of a melodic movement in the turnaround, so that's just this second movement, and then using 8th notes. If you want to check out some more chord solos that I've done videos on, then check out this short playlist where I'm going over similar exercises and also some more interesting tricks that you can use when you're making your own chord solos. And there are some on a blues in F and a blues in B flat and some different turnaround ideas. So a lot of common progressions that you can check out.